Back to order.
Say what?
Let's bring up our next. Yeah. Administration and Finance. Would you, Treasurer Collector's not here yet?
Luann is, so I would respectfully request that we just move on to Luann.
Okay, let's go to the Assessor.
Page 63.
63? Page 63.
63.
Thank you.
The budget starts on 55.
The budget starts in 65.
As I talk with my husband.
Right.
I totally apologize, everyone.
That's okay.
We have been concentrating on the budget pages, but please feel free to look through the narratives. If you have any questions on the goals and objectives the departments have set for themselves, just get them to us and we'll get you the answers.
Okay, let's start with 5100 personnel. Go ahead, Luann.
Oh,
So
okay,
anything-
you're saying an account number, it's like 5,100.
Well, it's,
I got whacked with a decrease.
oh, you didn't know your salary's going down. I'm sorry. Sorry to tell you that. Sorry to be the one.
Yeah, really. So, pretty much we're put in for the same rate as we did last year. My rate stayed the same. My administrative assistant is staying the same. We do put in a little bit of floating hours because I do have just about 6 weeks' time that I take off. that I've
Vacation?
accrued vacation personnel, so
6 weeks, huh?
6
That's
weeks.
awesome.
Yeah,
It's a great
yeah, I'll
town.
have my 20 years in next month.
20 years.
20
Oh,
years.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your service.
And also, the $1,000 is just for my yearly certification, and I'm working for my continuing credits for my next one, because I have to be reaccredited every 3 years, so.
But you are accredited
I
and
am
certified now.
accredited, yes.
Excellent. Any questions with that? Okay, moving on to employee support, 5110.
Is, again, this is another budget that is level funded, nothing's changed. My memberships for my MAO, which is my Massachusetts Assessment Association, those are just education conference dues. WCAA is Worcester County Assessors Association. We do put in for some mileage when we go away to schooling, and I do a lot of the field work around town, so I use my own vehicle, so I do reimburse for mileage on that. Notary, I didn't really have to do anything for renewal this year because I don't expire for another 4 years, so that's just a service that the town, lets me get my supplies with, and I offer it as a service for free for any of the people that come in for it.
Oh, that's awesome. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on. 5200 purchase of services.
Purchases of services went up a little bit this year, $500. We're paying for our legal ads for the Garden News, so they increased their rates. My Vision Software increased their yearly rates on theirs. And also Cartographics, which is my mapping company, went up $75, so it came to just about an increase of $500. Any questions?
Now, the mapping contract, do you have a contract with the mapping company?
Yes, that's an online one. It's just a yearly one. We renew with them every year.
Okay. Any questions with that? Okay, moving on. 5400 office supplies?
Office supplies, just a basic line item, $750.
Is that what you had last year
That was
as well?
last year, yeah, no change at all in that one, that was a level.
Excellent. Any questions?
None.
5700 expense budget?
Expense, that's just for postage and my registry of deeds, anytime plans get filed, they send me the plans back once they're recorded, so it's $2 a plan, so usually I get about 10 or 20 a year, so. Other than that, and postage, we still do a lot of mailing outs to our customers or our residents, so no change, it was level funded, still at $500.
Okay. Great. Any questions?
Just a comment.
Sure.
I want to commend Luann because she was one of the first department heads to submit her budget, which was nice.
Nice.
Oh, thank you.
you say that again?
OCD, I hate anything on my desk.
Well, thank you so much, Luann. Appreciate it. And,
Thanks.
If you could just try to have the colonial houses reduced in taxes just a little bit would be fantastic.
Unfortunately, they're all going up.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to town clerk since she's here. We'll do town clerk. You start off at
96.
96.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello, good
96, here
afternoon,
we go. Good
everybody.
afternoon. Okay, we'll start with personnel.
Okay, so we have increased the rate of the poll workers due to the minimum wage increase. So that was brought up the bottom line a
Yep.
little.
Up to 12. Now, obviously, that'll obviously increase again next year when it goes to the
Exactly.
1250.
Yep.
Okay. Are we doing stuff for that? We'll talk later. Okay. Any questions with that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, cool. We're moving on to employee support, 5110.
There was a decrease on this page because we eliminated a town clerks association dues that we no longer need.
Okay. Okay, moving on to, any questions with that? 5200, purchase of services?
There is a decrease because the codification has been paid. But there also has been a line was added for a voter guide, which the Board of Selectmen set a goal to increase voter awareness and attendance to town meeting. So there's a statute that allows towns to use money to prepare an information guide for local ballot questions. And that would be very similar to what the state sends out for when they have their elections. The town council would have the pros and cons to the question, and that would get mailed out to all the voters in town. The approximate cost of that would be $2,500. And then if we just did postcards, if we didn't have any ballot questions that year, it would just be like informational when town meeting is. Although I think it's a great idea, we just need to make sure it's something that we can sustain year after year for the cost.
Okay.
Could I interject a
Yes.
question?
Sure.
Carter, on the disallowed, how do you arrive at any of your disallowed portions? Is that based on previous year? What's it?
On the lump sum,
Yeah. Right, where they're asking for too much, and,
they're generally, if it's a lump sum disallowed, they're not asking for too much, in my opinion. It's simply.
no, they're not, they're very low. The last couple have been low, but I'm just trying to figure out where that comes from, because I almost started to use it as a grade, and it seemed like it was very balanced what they're budgeting for.
It's really, I have a cell on the front that tells me whether the budget is gonna be in surplus or in deficit. So my very first cut is for the zeros, or something I don't feel they can justify at all. When that tallies up, I go and I look at that cell on the front. Is it in surplus or is it in deficit? And once I see that, I go back in and start to take small incremental amounts out of virtually every single budget.
Okay.
It's a fairly anal approach, it's not real scientific,
Yeah.
and it's not a flat percentage. It's simply, and the larger the budget, so if you're $104,000 in highway,
Yeah,
it's more likely to be $4,000.
right.
If you're $1,700 in town clerks, it's more likely to be $130.
Yeah, I find it very
not
helpful
scientific.
to understand, like, that process, because as you go through, I mean, rather than asking ridiculous detailed questions about what kind of pen do you use, that helps to basically understand where that department is and whether they're, being realistic in their budget and otherwise, so.
I
Thank you
have
for
not, in my
answering that.
several years here, found the departments to be overly optimistic about what they might get,
Yeah.
and I haven't found any of them to be unreasonable or irrational in what they thought they needed to meet their needs.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the town clerk?
Still have more.
I know.
Oh, we're good?
No,
Oh.
keep going.
Okay. So we're on page 104.
104.
So the increase on this is due to the postage increase.
Postage went up?
Yep.
Everybody's registering their animals, I would assume?
It's
Are they,
getting
are
good.
they not happy with the increase of that, I would assume?
Some people have voiced their,
Opinion?
yes,
I got you.
but for the most part, everyone's
Well, it's in-
understanding.
Okay,
It hasn't raised for many years, so.
great. Anybody have any questions for 5,400? Okay, moving on. Expense budget,
Okay, so that's 105.
yep, replacing voting machines.
Yeah, so we need 3 new voting machines. They are no longer making the machines that we have. They stopped making them 2 years ago. So therefore, we won't have replacement parts in this.
They're end of service, end of life, end of service.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, well, Mike, I'll tell you, so they're DMS, but how long are they supportable?
Say that again?
So they're considered DMS, it's diminished manufactured source.
Yeah, they're all done.
But how long are they supportable? Do they just stop supportability on
Oh,
them right away?
they're end of support as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're done.
okay.
They will make repairs if they have the repart,
But if they don't have the parts.
but if
then
they
we're-
don't,
So, I mean,
So-
you should get that information. They can sit there and say, well, we only have spares to do this, but,
Yeah, we don't even have spares.
so then, okay.
When she briefed capital planning, we were under the impression that these things were all done.
and the
About
problem
it
is
was
we
the
don't
right
have a
time.
spare machine,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
No, I get it, it's just that, usually when something's gonna go end of life, you get kind of a notice, like
We
three or
did.
some, you did?
We
Yeah.
did 2 years ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
alright, if you had told me that, I wouldn't have answered that.
You can ask for, you can, Tony, you can ask whatever you want.
No, but just putting a little sanity, alright, so
Right.
you already got the end of life,
We did,
okay.
2 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
And,
good.
and this is on capital planning, so,
Yep, you gotta replace it.
okay, great.
And one last thing, as far as the codification goes, if
Yes.
I could get the board's feedback and the advisory committees as soon as possible, so that way we can all be on the same page and have town council come out, do one last discussion about.
And that's online.
Yes, any
Any,
concerns?
any citizens have sent any messages back on it or anything?
Not yet, but it'd
Can
be
I
nice
just-
to all be on the same page at
Yeah.
a town meeting.
that was already sent out, the draft
Can I just ask what will happen to the old voting machines? Like, what will we be doing with those, or?
We'll be trading them in.
Oh, okay, so
they'll-
you actually, they won't be just sitting here somewhere?
No.
Okay,
We
thank you.
can trade them back in.
Get a little something for them.
You guys have any questions?
I would just draw your attention to page 99 in your budget book. The select board tasked us with trying to come up with different means, as the clerk said, to increase voter participation, attendance at town meetings. Carol and the town moderator hosted a meeting here. We had a half a dozen attendees. I think Tony was there that night, Julie, John was there. And one of the ideas that was floated was some sort of, meeting pre-notification. So Carol's kind of gone through and costed out what, mailing a postcard before each might cost. The other piece is, that she spoke about, was this voter information guide.
Mm-hmm.
So in the budget is enough to send these pre-meeting, pre-election postcards twice a year. In a year in which you had a ballot question, if we knew enough ahead of time, we would include it in the budget. If we didn't, we'd come to the reserve for it. But this, chapter 53, section 18B, which is on page 100, has to be adopted by the select board.
Mhm.
And then there's a process by which you announce to the community, you're accepting a pro and a con. You tell them how many words they can use. That
Mhm.
goes to town council. He has to actually review it and vet it under the statute. But once that's done, you now can mail out ballot information. Absent this, the only information you can mail out, and you may remember on the override last year, you have to be very careful to stick to a discussion of the town meeting article.
Gotcha.
So if you wanna send out a voter guide, if you wanna participate in informational guidance on ballot questions, you have to adopt this chapter 53.
Can you put that in the, is that in the
Section
workshop?
18B. Sure.
Okay.
And we have sent this to the schools to see if they would be interested in disseminating, because they can't adopt this, only you can.
Understood.
However, we believe they could disseminate under their budget the materials that would be prepared under adoption of this. So this is something that you'll need to do within a few weeks.
Yeah.
Soon.
So you,
Yeah, I would say we should decide it by April 1, April 6,
we
somewhere.
can bring it up, we can probably put it on the agenda for,
So I just
the
wanted to
13th.
draw your attention to that.
appreciate it. Any questions?
Police department.
Oh, you have it. all.
Nothing?
and
You guys good? They're all good.
Okay,
You're
thank
doing a great
you.
job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
How's the new house?
Very nice.
Excellent. I'm glad.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks. Okay, next we have the treasure collector. That's on page
Starts at 84.
84.
It starts at 84, but it's probably 86.
Six.
It's 86.
Follow the contracts. Okay, John, can you just let Mallory make a quick?
Donuts are on the counter, the sandwiches and everything that needs to be refrigerated is in the fridge in the kitchen, so help yourself. If not, waters are still out there and all that good stuff.
Great, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
you, Mallory.
Thank you.
Niece.
Oh, you voted?
Yeah, she's my niece. Yeah, very good.
Good afternoon, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm so happy.
Cheryl, it's good to see you.
Good, thank you.
So let's move on to treasure collector. Any questions with the memo? So, let's start with 5100 personnel.
Yep, page 86.
86?
Yep.
Thank you.
So the first one we have is personnel. There have been no changes. We still have the 3 positions, no changes in any of that for this time around.
Any questions? Yes, Jeff.
I just have one, and it's probably simple. But with regarding to the treasurer collector salary,
Mm-hmm.
the treasurer collector contract that's on the town's website, it has for fiscal year 2020 a salary of $65,000. And since this reflects not a big amount, but it's $491 over that amount, is
Well, the town has, and that's something I think probably deserves some addressing in the future, because the town has set the town clerk's salary, the police chief's salary, fire chiefs, on the fiscal year, when what they and there are towns that take the view of, there's 52.4 weeks, you're getting the fiscal year, there's 53 weeks, you're getting the fiscal year. So what some other towns do is say, you're getting this per week, and then it's a portion. This town has done the latter without doing it contractually. So if you wanna hold to the fiscal year, I understand exactly what you're saying, but we'll have to apply that across the range of police, fire, town clerk, and the like. That's a judgment for this. I would say that, I've tried to honor the tradition of the way the town had been doing it. If we wanna break that, we should certainly clean up the contracts.
Yes.
that's my thing. You know, the contract says it'll be
Yeah,
this, but then there's a
we
different
probably
number.
should convert
Just,
to per week,
Right.
and maybe when we get to the warrant article and talk about the town clerk's salary, that might be a good place to get started.
Yeah.
But I've been honoring the town's approach.
Okay, that's just.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Moving on to 5110 employee support.
Okay, this is for my Mass Collectors Treasurers membership, the Worcester County Collector Treasurers membership, in the schools that I go to every year. Any conferences that are held, that would cover all of this, and any travel that, to get to some of these ones at the Cape, and
I got you. Do we have any questions with this? Okay, moving on. Purchase of services, 5,200.
Can I just address
Sure.
something? Please understand that for some of the positions where we like to have certified people, part of the certification is they have to have a certain number of years in office. So unless you can steal a certified town clerk or a certified treasurer collector, a certified accountant, there will be a period of time from when they come into your employ before they have the time in service
Right.
to get that certification.
Okay, purchase of services, the first one is just an annual report that we do. Globe Direct is our billing for our excise and, property tax. This is the one that we just changed, we used to have Bill Trust. We were wanting to go from 3 billings to 2, and they wanted to charge us $6,000 for a template.
Wow.
Globe Direct did not charge us anything. So we just did our first run with them the first of the year with the property tax, and
That went well?
it went very well.
And we're not doing the return envelopes, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we gave you a memo in analyzing that. We found that
Yeah.
close to 50% of the
It
people
was probably more than
were
that.
actually not even using the return envelopes.
Yeah,
We're
that's-
doing
that's-
that and online,
Right,
yeah.
that saves us a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, good call. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on to supplies.
Okay, supplies is just miscellaneous stamps if we have to mail something. The postage envelopes, we get postage paid envelopes in when we use those. We mail out the demands that way. Warrant checks, that's a charge for the checks. I'm actually working with the bank right now to see why we have to pay for those. And the rest is just miscellaneous, file boxes, labels, storage,
Gotcha.
that type of stuff.
Excellent. Any questions? 5,700 expense budget?
Okay, this is for the tax takings and the attorney fees and anything that we have to do with that for the delinquent accounts that we advertise and put in the paper. Sending those to the registry of deeds, paying for those fees.
Right.
Do we need to be concerned with any direct expense cost we'll get from taking on the sewer collections?
We would have it's virtually no expenses
Okay.
in taking it on.
Okay, great. 5,200 purchase of services.
I don't have that one.
200?
57?
No.
Information.
That's the last
Oh,
one you
wrong
have.
time, wrong budget.
Oh, that's IT.
I'm like,
Budget.
wrong budget.
Okay.
Come on.
I was just wondering, why is Comcast on here?
If I could turn your attention, are there any other questions on the treasurer's operating budget? If I could turn your attention to 217, since I'm the one that's been dealing with the debt and the placement, if you don't mind, I'll address that.
Okay.
So we break the debt for purposes of tracking our revenue and expense stream, into excluded debt. This is monies where there's been a ballot question to exclude that debt from the normal tax levy limit. Now, you all do something that's a little different than I've seen in some other communities. You all pay the enterprise fund debt, then you send a bill to the enterprise fund, and then you wait for them to pay you. Discussion for another day, has some issues, but I just want you to be aware of it. And you will see about halfway down where we start to have the police department and the school GOB, general obligation bond. Payment comes in, and then we'll have these several bands that roll forward until we do another general obligation bond around this time
Next year,
in
right?
2020. On page 218, this is the non-debt excluded. And at this point, it is essentially all utilities. We did move the lease payment article from the cruiser and the 1-ton in here. That's certainly something we can talk about. One of the things that we're trying to get across and codify at some point is you have a fixed amount of debt for capital equipment right now. You have that lease on the ambulance.
Mhm.
You have the
Right.
lease on the 1-ton and the cruiser. You have the 92.5. It's very important that when that lease is paid off, you not wipe the sweat off your brow and say, great, now we can go
No, at least another one.
spend it here. Because if you buy into an operating expense, now you're gonna have a capital need with no resource. So, we've referred to this in some communities as debt smoothing. Pick that level of debt you can afford,
Right.
commit it to capital, and stick to it. On page 219, I wanna draw your attention to some projections. No pride of authorship here, feel free. Did we send the Excel spreadsheet out yet?
Which one?
The budget template?
Oh, yeah, we got sent to advisory, yes.
Okay. So feel free to go through that. It has some assumptions in it. You'll see down at the bottom, the school police department general obligation bond 1. That's what's in place right now.
At the front,
General obligation bond 2, that's what we anticipate
right here.
placing in fiscal 20. It doesn't actually hit the books till fiscal 21. And then general obligation bond number 3. Even after you complete your school, there's a period of time, can be as short as 18 months, can be as long as 3 years, in which the MSBA comes in.
Mm-hmm.
They check all of your records, they verify everything, they determine how much, if any, of your change orders they're going to pay for. They send you a final check. Once you know what that is, then you can place your last general obligation bond. And you don't know those numbers. Right now, the school's doing very well on budget. We'll hope that continues. But you never know what a project's gonna cost until you're all done,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm figuring almost 3 years afterwards. There is just, so folks will know, there was $12.250 million in the bond offering, and the number here is 12.135. The difference between these numbers is when we go out to seek bonds, we seek the total amount that we need. Then we get a bond premium. I'm old enough to remember that when you opened a bank account, they gave you a blanket or a toaster or something else, depending on how big the deposit was. Well, the finance companies essentially do the same thing. They pay you a premium, but they're willing to pay you to borrow from them. We use that to pay the bond counsel, FedEx of all the documents, Moody's, they're not free, you pay them. Our financial advisor, the person who puts all the documents
Mhm.
together. What's left for the bond premium
Goes.
has to be used to buy down the bond. It's called resizing. So we say, we're gonna borrow 12.25 million, subject to a resizing of the final amount we borrowed based upon the net premium that we're left with. So that number's gonna be a little bit different. Two things of note, if the assumptions here are correct, and again, feel free to crawl through the spreadsheet, no great pride of authorship, can be a formula error or the like. The projected net increase for the school alone was $1.75, based upon the assumptions that we've used, which include an increase of 25 basis points in each of the future years of placement.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using 25-year borrowing, not 28, to try to keep the interest down a squish if we can. It looks like we're gonna be at about $1.60 on the tax rate. And I've used, if I did this correctly, again, feel free to please crawl through that
I see what you did.
spreadsheet. I've used the tax rate base as of fiscal 16, because that's when you told people what the rate would be, so I've used that same number as opposed to using today's number. Last thing I just want to bring to your attention from a capital planning perspective, there is in fiscal 23, I know that sounds a long ways away, It's actually right around the corner. About $260,000 of debt excluded debt that goes off the books in '23. Should be thinking about roads, rolling stock, buildings,
Yep.
or the like on that debt smoothing concept. Pick an amount of debt you can deal with and keep investing in your plant and in capital. Happy to answer any other questions on it, but that's all I can tell you about current and the future progression that we see for the debt placements.
Do we have any questions? Jeff?
Not as of yet,
Not yet.
not yet.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cara, for doing that. Appreciate it. We'll get the accountants next. Accountant, you start on page
858.
58.
58?
Yeah,
58I.
Farm accountant.
Okay, let's go with 5100 personnel.
Okay, it's pretty much the same as last year. It has gone up a little bit. We needed to pay, the incoming assistant a little bit more to be able to get, someone that was actually truly qualified for the position. We had a lot of applicants, but there was only 2 that were, even remotely qualified, and we needed to pay them a little bit more, to get Nicole, and she's done a fabulous job for us.
Good, I'm glad. Any questions with
On
this?
that one? Okay.
Okay, moving on to 5110. Employee support.
5110 is much like with Cheryl. I have to take a variety of different classes for the certification, of which starting Monday I go to the conference for accountants, and on Wednesday I take the dreaded certification test again. Last year there was 42 people that took it and only 8 passed. So it is an extremely difficult test, so send positive thoughts my way on Wednesday.
Keep studying. Keep studying.
Yep. So that one is kind of down a little bit. There was a class that I could take for the studying of the test, and I'm being optimistic I will pass this year.
Good, excellent. Any questions? Okay, moving on to 5200, purchase of services.
This one is up just a little bit because of the new Paychex payroll system that we have, which has, we had a very rocky start, but things have smoothed out great. One of the best benefits to the employees that we're getting ready to work toward, we've gotten all the tablets up and running at all the locations. That seems to be working fairly well. Each one of the employees will have their own portal that they're able to log into. They're going to be able to see their pay stubs. They're going to be able to see their taxes. They can change their direct deposits. So everyone will have their own login portal that they can have the documents. And then going forward, it'll have their W-2s every year. It's very versatile for what we need to be in today's world.
It tracks their vacation, their personal time, their sick time,
Vacation,
so they can actually
personal.
see it versus tracking it on an Excel spreadsheet.
Right, and
Excellent.
it also, on their stubs, it also shows their punches, so the highway guys now have that permanent record, not on a time card that's filed in a box somewhere. It's actually printed on their timesheet, or their stub, so it's done very well.
Yeah, I know, coming out of the store. No more punching time cards anymore. This is great.
Yeah.
Kelly, I had a question. So,
Yes.
under that line item, it's you've arrived at 14.5 by
Yes.
using quantity and cost. Could you explain that? Like 53, 230? Is that the way that it's broken down?
Yes, because we pay, we have weekly payrolls, and it averages.
All right, okay.
Averages around $230 for a weekly payroll
All right, I
processing.
understand.
It's higher on other weeks because we pay the fire department on-call people every other week. So that adds about 30 to 40 people that we pay more in that week. So, but that's a rough,
And what if we went to a bi-monthly? How much, that would save money, wouldn't it?
yes, most definitely. It would save, a huge amount, probably at least half of that.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, got it.
So,
So,
something to look into.
so what is it actually?
We're,
Bi-monthly,
Bi-weekly.
or bi-monthly.
we're working towards that, and we're working towards the elimination of all paper, because that will save also.
Absolutely.
We're
Oh,
gonna
is that,
complete
that's the
total
variance that
electronic.
she's talking about?
Okay, but
Who's,
I
is the
don't
police
wanna
department's?
mislead you, you're looking at probably 2 to 3 years out before you could
Right.
fully implement,
Okay,
this, cause you have to get, you have to get agreement from all the separate.
all the
separate
contracts,
groups.
yeah, I got you. And, I mean, that's something we can work towards, I guess.
We are,
I know you are. I was just making sure people were aware that we are working different avenues to save money.
Yeah.
Instead of doing weekly paychecks, do, bi-monthly paychecks, so it's twice a month versus 4 times a month, which will save thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, Carter had said, I mean, everyone's gonna have their own portal to run their stubs, but
Right.
we still have a lot of employees that still get a payroll check. So we can't eliminate that delivery service each week that we have to have for the
Right.
people that actually get checks.
Right.
So if we could even get to the point where everything was direct deposit, that would also be a savings.
that by
But
itself, yeah.
that in
by
itself
itself,
would be a
right?
savings, but that's quite the struggle with
We
a
do
lot of
checks?
employees.
Well, there's only one department that does that still, right?
No,
No,
there's there's other departments.
direct deposit across the board
Yeah.
would save a
Save.
substantial.
I can't believe it
substantial
either. I
amount.
can't believe it either.
I'm actually really shocked. that
I
we
can't
do
believe
that.
it either.
Didn't know.
And they're adamant,
And
they're
ba-
adamant, they're
That they
not,
wanted to check.
that they wanna check.
And
Adamant.
back in the day, when the old system that they were using didn't track their leave, didn't, their vacation, they were tracking her in an Excel spreadsheet in her office.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, this was a great step forward.
Oh, this definitely, makes things, I mean, and we still have more steps to go. I mean, going to, everybody doing direct deposit, I think, which is gonna be huge, and then, going to a bi-monthly pay, that way it's,
Bi-weekly pay.
a bi-weekly,
Bi-weekly, yeah.
bi-weekly pay, which is, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, bi-monthly
Bi-
is a little less intimidating, John.
It is, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, bi-weekly, that's what I meant, sorry.
Really
Yeah,
adamant,
it's a-
adamant that
Well, I
they
get
get
paid
the check.
I get paid by the government, I get paid once a month on the first, so I don't know how you guys, I have to spread mine out for 30 days,
Yeah.
and it's so hard with all my children. But anyways. Okay, moving on, any other questions?
I did, so, math-wise, 53, 230, 14.5 doesn't match, but what you are saying is that there's variance
yes,
between how many are submitted, so it
Right.
could fluctuate. So
Right.
that's why the line item is
Right.
14.5.
Yeah.
and
I'm
that's.
good with that.
Because
and-
their on-call fire really
Yeah.
Yep.
fluctuates.
Yeah, I just wanna know why the math wasn't adding up, but that makes
And when
sense to me.
and also, when we signed an agreement with Paychex, that was the max for each year. So the 14.5 is,
What you budgeted for.
that's what we're budgeted for, cause we
Got it.
explained to
That makes
them,
sense.
we can't say, okay, this year we're gonna be 15 or whatever. They know that's our perimeters of what we need to stay in for a fiscal year.
Excellent.
We should make that match, because someday we're gonna look back on that and say like, well, why did we do that?
Or add in a note, like, what Carter's
Yeah,
done.
We have to do something with that.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
make a note at
Carter
the
added
bottom.
in notes for some of the things in those sheets,
Right,
and I
but
think
there's
that
no
was
note
very
on this
helpful.
one.
Yeah.
Put a
So
note
we're-
there.
to explain that line item, I think
Please.
is good.
So we'll put a note
Good
there.
catch.
14.5 max contract, variance due to amount included within each pay period, whatever the pay
Numbers of
period is.
people are on
Bi-monthly,
call
bi-weekly.
or-
There's a whole bunch.
We need
Yeah.
to add something. Thank you, Mike.
We will do that.
I can't help it. I see the numbers and I'm like, that doesn't happen.
Thanks, Mike. Anything else? Any other questions?
Just as a side note, the company I work for doesn't allow for a check to be cut. I'm wondering if
Yeah.
going forward, there can be some sort of, starting, fiscal 20 or 21 for new hires, make direct deposit mandatory, and then as people leave the job, phase out, retire, you're eliminating that.
We've done that.
We've done
So
that.
we have-
Oh, okay.
We have 3 collective bargaining agreements. One requires everybody go on direct deposit. The other 2 require that all new hires as of July 1/18 go on direct
Yeah.
deposit. And this select board, I think, around the same time,
Mhm.
amended the personnel plan to require that all new hires go
Yep.
on direct deposit.
right.
Nice.
So you do get there eventually.
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that, thank you.
It's like a
Which,
grandfather
which,
clause
you
kind
know,
of
when
thing.
you get enough people on one side of the bus or the other, then the whole thing will tip.
Yeah.
We're working it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to 5400.
Okay, this one is pretty much the same, except for, I need a little more supplies. Now that I've been here a little bit and have gotten the audits behind me, I've been able to pay my attention to more of the issues. One of the things is the payable system, the 1099s had never been set up properly. So we did a mailing to all of our vendors to make sure we had updated 1099s. Did the 1099 process with all of the vendors this year instead of the handful that, you know, we could rush to get done. And then a box of envelopes for myself for the accountant's office. You know, poor Cheryl, I've been using hers all along, but I need to have my own, so I'm not taking them from her. So that's why it's, you know, up some, is for those two costs.
We also no longer will cut a check till somebody's given us their W-9, because we'd get these new small vendors and the department really wanted to get them paid, and we stopped that shortly after I got here, because if you do pay them and you need to issue them a 1099, it's amazing how hard it is to track them down after they've gotten their money. So now, W-9 comes in, set up a new vendor account, then they can get paid.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
On all the different budgets in the same building, I'm a little confused as to why office supplies don't land on in one office's budget, so that it can be dispersed. You're buying in bulk and you're saving money. Every budget in this building, everyone has their own. I'm buying my own paper, I'm buying my own stapler, I'm buying my own pen. I'm just a little curious if we could save money buying in bulk. You put it all in one office and it gets distributed fairly throughout your offices.
Who would manage that,
Have you
Julie?
done that before, or?
That's the problem.
You're not gonna save any money.
You'd have,
You're not,
you'd have
in
to have
bulk.
a
I know
quartermaster.
nobody's gonna wanna believe it, because we're buying, with the exception of paper, where we do buy in bulk, 15, 20 cases at a time.
Uh-huh.
For the most part, some of these envelopes come with the pre-printed addresses. And the other thing is, depends upon how you wanna do it. We've been trying to show you, with the exception of IT and fringe
Right.
benefits, the total cost of running that department. There are organizations where they would carry all of that over in a larger supply. We can do it either way, but I don't
But you
think
don't
it's
see
gonna.
costs.
I don't see it saving a substantial amount of money. We do want to explore over this coming year the postage meter. That's an account where, I think we could have better control.
Apparently we don't do that.
If everyone had to come up here, run everything through the postage meter. So we will be looking at that. That's a control item.
That's a standard, yeah, I got you. Okay.
Thank you.
That's like that's a mail machine, right?
Yeah, it does, yeah,
Okay.
puts a stamp on the
Even
postage
even
they
in the,
Oh, yeah, I had one.
Yeah.
community
We did.
before the
I
last
know.
that I managed, we had a single contract with WB Mason. So we were getting, in effect, if you will, bulk buying, but each department still bought and charged to their department what it was, and we did it via the contract.
Right.
And we could certainly look at doing something like that with Staples.
Would they invoice us like that?
It's,
Would they invoice the
Single-
town or invoice the department?
well, therein lies one of the interesting features here. It came through as a single invoice, and central administration simply marked it and charged it to the departments. Here, you'd have to copy it up, send it out to all the departments, and then they would put it all on their warrants, because that's the way we do things here.
That's the way we do it here. It's a good song.
I'm just,
Nice.
No, I it's just, it's one of those things that, that we did look into. I mean, Diane had a big thing on, about buying in bulk and buying,
Yeah.
all centrally located at one location, then dispersed it out. But there was really no cost savings to that.
Yeah.
Other than the paper.
Right.
Just paper.
The paper, which we do in bulk. But stamp envelopes, I mean, compared to the budget, I mean, these are small items compared to what we really need to look at. You know,
I'll check with WB Mason and Staples and see if they'll set up a similar bulk contract.
okay, sounds good.
Um,
Yes,
we already Carter, we already have that with WB Mason and Staples.
Set for everything?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll talk to you about that then.
And then just another side note to that is in this building, once we all got moved here, we have office supplies like you can't even imagine. So pretty much before we buy anything in this building, we go from
Go to the
department to
archives
department
first.
and see, do you have
You
this?
beg and borrow until
like-
you have to put it on your budget.
Right, for an example,
That's good to know.
not long after I was here, somebody in the highway says, do you need any calculator tapes? And I said, oh yeah, I could always use those. And they brought over a case of about 50 rolls.
Oh, my lord.
So I'm not gonna need to buy that for years. So,
First
good
you
to
go-
know.
Yeah.
First you go to the archives to see what's.
Gotcha.
what we have.
Excellent.
Essentially, you centralize everything without it being mandated.
That's right.
So I think they're doing what you said, Julie, but they just do it internally.
Because we really don't
Which
have a
is good.
person to assign to do that with the time.
I mean, that shows a
all
lot
the
of things, and
buying and
employees working
stuff.
well together, I mean, it shows cohesiveness.
I mean, I've never seen any fights in that community.
I don't see them, no, I'm not. All right, thank you so much.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank
Nope.
you. No.
Okay, let's move on to. Community services, librarian? Oh, yeah, she is.
Hi.
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 For any of you that I haven't met yet.
What page you start at? What page?
Library's 191.
Library is towards
191?
191.
99.
Okay.
190.
Oh,
199, and then,
I thought the same thing.
Right.
It's true, and I'm like,
Mike, did you
no,
not wear
it's
your
photo.
hearing aids?
No, I didn't. I'm sitting on the wrong side of you, too. Only my left ear is gone.
This isn't done bad.
yeah, we're gonna start with, 5100 personnel. Salaries.
That's not open.
There are 3 of us that man the 30 hours that we are open every week. Myself and 2 library assistants. We alternate among the 3 of us the Saturdays that we're open year-round. So
Great.
there's coverage there. There are a few periods where there's only 1 staff person at the library. This past year, we added our, a panic button alarm type thing to the existing alarm system that we had, just for an added layer of security when there is only 1 person on staff.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to 5110.
The training fees and travel, that figure is really primarily traveling expenses. Through our membership in CW Mars and the Massachusetts Library System, we have access to lots and lots of trainings and workshops, all of which are free, webinars, so there's no training involved, no travel involved in those. So that's what that figure is.
Any questions?
The difference between the 150 requested and 195 given?
I thought she was a little too tight on her request.
That's what we
Okay.
thought.
And would like to see them,
Absolutely.
to the extent they can, get to a few more of these
Yep.
things. There's a happy medium between, you could be gone every week versus not getting to enough
Right.
of these types of events.
Oh, actually, I put it right here.
Yep.
Yeah, let's see here, 5200 purchase of services.
Sorry.
Our CW Mars membership, that figure is, I apply for and have been able to receive a small libraries and networks grant every year, so that reduces it to the figure that you see there. We get a lot of benefits for that membership. Not only does it include our access in the database, but as I said earlier, there's trainings that we have access to, all kinds of IT support from their team.
a dedicated internet line, so it's a great network, that we get a lot for that money, so.
And with the grant, we're definitely gonna get the grant?
Yes, well, we've received it so far. It's really, it's their way of helping the smaller community libraries.
Okay.
So, I don't, unless that line item is cut from the state's budget, I think we're pretty much guaranteed of receiving it.
Well, I just don't want to, not to get it, then that 4,677 is gonna go up to.
It's go up, right,
you know what I mean?
exactly,
Okay.
right.
Any questions?
Post office box, that helps.
Ship them in.
We, don't have mail delivery because we're right in the center, so
Yep.
that's, pretty much our only option for receiving mail.
And you use the Templeton Center Post Office?
Yes.
I never knew that.
Any other questions? Moving on to 5,400, expense budget.
Again, I think I put a little sheet in there about, that outlined the requirements for state certification, one of which is a material expenditure requirement, and that figure needs to amount to 19% of the total library appropriation. So that's what that figure represents. And our office supplies, now that we're on the CW Mars network, have dropped from what they had been in previous years because we're no longer having to purchase the little pockets and the book cards and a lot of the things that we did under the old way of processing books. Now everything just gets barcoded,
Oh, great,
so.
excellent. Any questions with that?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I use this everywhere.
Yeah,
Rotating stock, I think that's the only way I can think of it. My parents are down on the South Shore, they have a book sale to try and rotate stock, like they sell old books, new books come in. Do you have any kind of like a rotable system, or how do you refresh your material?
Well, every year, we hold a book sale during the Arts and Crafts Fair weekend.
Okay,
And so probably along around April, we start to go through the collection and weed out items that are no longer really being circulated very
Right.
often or are outdated
okay,
in terms of the accuracy of the material. So that's, as we purchase.
is that
these
effective
books.
for each?
It is, and actually, now that we're on the CW Mars database, that process is going to be even more streamlined. We can actually look at an individual item and see, its circulation, and so see the trends there, what items are circulating, what genres are more popular.
Great.
So their software keeps statistics then of
All
The
kinds
book
of
usages.
statistics, it's great, yeah,
Yep.
tons of statistics, so.
great. Any other questions? No?
I would ask Sheila to come up from Veteran Services to join the director there
Sure.
and go through her budget, if
Sure.
that's agreeable.
Sounds good to me. Veteran Services? Hi, Sheila.
Hi, John.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Oh, just grand. Spend all day here, are you kidding me? This is awesome.
It's such a terrible day outside. Don't put the blinds up, just take my word.
What page you starting on?
176.
176, thank you.
Well, 178 budget pages.
Oh, the budget's on 178.
178.
178.
78. This one did it too. Nope.
Okay. So, 20,150?
Correct.
Anybody have any questions with 5,100 salary?
None.
No? Okay, excellent. Moving on. Employee support?
This is for the conferences I go to, plus the membership into the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officer Association, as well as the Worcester County Veteran Service Agents Association, as where I get a lot of my information and network with other veterans and VSOs. And then for travel, I just put for the training that's required. I go to 3 trainings a year, and then I put another 100 miles because sometimes I end up traveling to go to meetings and such.
Okay. Wish I had this one, I was, yeah.
Shut up, you.
Didn't have any of this.
Quiet in front.
I'll quiet in the front. Any questions with this? Excellent, moving on.
Okay.
Purchase services?
This is for VetraSpec. It's a software program. It allows me to go right into the VA and put my forms in. So when somebody comes to my office, instead of sending it off to Boston so they can put it in the system and kind of lose track of where the information is, and I'm able to go and look in there now. So if a veteran comes in and asks me, where is my application, I can actually come in here and look and see what's going on. Plus, it gives us a little bit of protection by making sure that when the veteran comes in and they file the paperwork, that it's actually going right into the VA system and that we're not carrying any kind of liability. It also auto-corrects, makes sure I'm using the current forms and that they're filled out properly, brings information over. So it will cut down my time in filling out the forms. It also gives me some online material that I can go and check, which is pretty valuable in making sure that it's always on time and most recent forms.
Any questions with that?
Not on 5200, but she doesn't have a 5400.
Right here,
Oh, it is?
keep flipping.
Okay, got it. Sorry. I didn't flip far enough.
Okay, great, so go on to 5400.
Down in front.
So the next page was just a breakdown of VetraSpec in case you needed it. 5400 office supplies and postage.
This is great. I never got any of this. This is
That-
awesome.
Yeah, that's why I was gonna bring it up. This is very good.
This is beyond reproach.
Approach.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is great. I'm so impressed.
So the postage and office supplies are gonna help me get the word out to our veterans that I'm here and available. I'm not sure if you read it, but the VA actually puts $3 million back into our community every year, which is huge. By doing the VetraSpec and getting the word out that I'm here, hoping to bring in more money to the veterans means more money spending in the community. So I think it's
It's awesome. Uh, 5700 expense budget.
5,700. I requested 92. I believe it was right around 80,000. Well, the first thing is the Topaz signature pad, which is going to allow me to do everything online. It's going to cut down on my postage as well as the paper use that I have now. So I think it's well worth the $250 to get it on here. Everything is set up. The state eats all the setup fee, the initial setup fee. So the difference between the 80,000 and 92,000, Carter and I sat down. The best, I believe that you actually got my projections for 2019 as well as 2020. 8,000 of that is for burials. So far this year, we've only spent 1,600 on burial. Thank you, because those aren't fun. But it's really, people come in, people come on, move out of the town. It's kind of hard to really say. It's not something that continually climbs. It's not something that decreases. It's just the way it works and, right.
Is
So,
that specifically for burials?
There's a $2,000 reimbursement, yes.
actually, it's up to
That's what
4,000 now.
It's up to 4,000 now.
That 80,000 is strictly for that?
No, it is not. So it's called Chapter 115. It's a state program that each town has the responsibility of having a veteran service officer, either in a district or in a town, and they administer the Chapter 115. So this money is actually something we give to veterans that meet financial guidelines. And once they meet that, we must pay, and they come into my office and request Chapter 115, I have to put them into the system, and if they qualify, then I have to pay them. The state reimburses the town 75% of that.
And it goes on the cherry sheet at the end of the year.
So even though it's 80,000 here, we are getting reimbursed 75% of that into the town.
It's a great program. Massachusetts is
the,
one of the best states doing this.
Yes, it is, it's a great.
It's a great state. I mean, if you're 100% disabled, the state also gives you a $2,000, allotment in August and February. The state really does take care of its veterans.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and because I can't do math very well, if this was 100,000, you get 75,000 back into the town, but that's 100,000. So we spent 25,000 to put 100,000 back in the community, and I think that is.
Yeah,
It's worth the dollars, that's for sure.
no, I
And
mean, you know how I feel about that.
I know how you, yep.
If you have the data available, or either between the two of you, what is our 5-year trend? So if we're at 92 projected for 20, that's what you're asking for. We had 89 so far from last year. What was the past 3 years? Are we steadily going up 10 grand a year, or a few grand a year?
No, it's fluctuating. We've had,
Ah.
so we had
It's
a,
up and down.
we had a year where we spent well over 100,000.
I remember
And
that,
so
yeah.
when we do the average, it throws everything off. So I was going through here trying to figure out what makes sense. And I couldn't even, so I wanted to bring up those projections I gave to you. At the time that I did those projections, that is what I honestly thought it was gonna cost the town. I believe it was 89,000 this year.
Yeah.
However, because of the way that it fluctuates, I'm thinking maybe it's only 82,000.
Yeah.
But if somebody walks in my office and I have to pay out, it goes back
And that's the
up.
only
So-
indicator, so that was my next question. What are the indicators that can help us? We go to war, we can reasonably expect, sometime after that, how many services are, right now, is there any kind of indicator that can help us? So if you say it fluctuates, is there anything, is it tied to weather? Is it tied to economy factors?
I think economy does play a role.
It definitely, since
So would
you
it be
have to
like
be financially
like some kind of consumer index in
eligible.
Massachusetts might help?
I mean, the way,
So-
the way
Maybe
it's
not
taught-
for discussion here
No, I know,
today,
but-
but.
Yep, go ahead, Sheila.
So, Mike, unfortunately, I don't think that we have some way to indicate whether it's gonna go up and down, and my reason is because we have somewhere between 500 and 800 veterans in our community, and I would say I only work with about 50 of them.
Okay.
And that's through all the organizations I go to in that. So, as the word gets out, as I continue to put out the word that I'm here, that could increase,
Yeah.
so.
I look at the likely factors that if you're consistently dealing with 50 veterans, what all of a sudden when you have 55 or 60 or 70, what are the indicators that push those veterans into a situation where like, I need help? But probably not for
And-
discussion today, but it
yeah.
would be interesting to.
And if you wanted to know, I think a lot of these people are coming in because there's a death of a spouse has
Okay.
triggered some of those.
Right.
Or the increases in, the cost of living and
Mm-hmm.
such.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think anybody has a model out there, a predictive model, but we can send an email out to the Veteran Service Officer Association, see if somebody does have a predictive model, how they do it.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I've asked around to other veteran service there's smaller towns that have twice the budget that twice the payout that I have.
Mm.
So, you're looking at the economy of the town, homelessness, which we don't, have a problem with in our veteran population. So it's really hard to look across the, even our 10 towns that we look at
Okay.
and try to figure out what's going on.
Thanks.
Anybody have any questions?
If you get a chance to look at page 14, I'm sorry, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
mean to interrupt.
Nope.
Different.
Jeff, yep, go ahead.
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe I saw there's a projected possible request for transfer to veteran service, around 20,000. I thought I.
Well, what we do is every time we issue a quarterly report, we try to give you a sense of where we might be headed. And this is one account that we've identified may need to be backfilled at the annual town meeting. And in the warrant, which is what you're probably looking at, probably around Article 2 or 3, at this point, we've projected the possible need for a backfill of around 20. That was prepared almost a month ago now. That may be closer to 10 or 12.5 as we get closer.
That's why I don't think the 92,000 is enough. It's,
Well, and that brings me, you guys
Go
are giving
down.
me these great segues over there. On page 14,
Softballs.
I mean, truth be told, there's not enough money in a number of these budgets.
14.
So what we try to give you on page 14, from our point of view, again, remember, this is our recommendation, the board has yet to act upon it. That if there are more monies that become available, or if there are cuts that you see, we try to annually identify some areas where we've made some lump sum disallows that we're not as comfortable
Yeah.
as we'd like to be with.
Right.
And you'll see that Veteran Services trying to restore about 7,250 there, if there's more monies as revenues or if there's cuts identified elsewhere. So bottom line, I agree, but there's only so much money to go around, and we have to try to do it in a manner that we think will take care of everybody, at least through the fall town meeting, through the spring town meeting.
it's just, just to add to that, back when the town used to belong to a veterans district, and one year I was the town's representative to that district, we actually, the town spent more money on administrative costs than they did paying out to veterans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over
Which is why I was a
30,000.
proponent of it coming back to the town. Even though it's a greater cost on the taxpayers, it was well worth it, because we were spending, the amount of money we were allocating for the Veterans District, majority of it was going for administrative cost, and that's just a bad thing, so
We weren't
I
even
will always think
servicing
that
as
this is
many
too
veterans,
low
right,
of a
Jeff?
number.
Jeff, we weren't servicing many veterans, correct?
They weren't getting service because the funds weren't there, and the agent, I'm not gonna go on it, but the agent wasn't doing his job, and he wasn't looking out for the towns that he was in. It was pretty terrible.
Yes, it was.
If I
Yes.
could just add to that, I agree with you. I feel districts, if your VSO is not in your in your town, then the surrounding communities that are in a district don't get the time and care that they require. In my personal opinion, since I've been here since March, I really feel having the VSO here can actually benefit the town more, as well as working with Jackie and the other teams to actually kind of make a community process as opposed to just a district where we just hand money to somebody and hope for the best.
Right.
Yep, no, good job. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. Any other questions for the Veteran Service Officer?
Well, I have Sheila here, we have discussed a few possible changes to the Veterans Advisory Committee bylaw. We'll be talking with you that evening, that's scheduled for the evening session, about whether or not those should be standalones or just put into the codification. They're pretty straightforward.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Sheila. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Sheila.
it.
Thanks,
I'll talk to you,
Jackie.
I'll talk to you later.
Seniors.
Oh, you already checked it off. My eyes are going blind here, my eyes can't see shit. Okay, we'll do senior services?
I know a number.
Starts on 186.
I do.
190.
How are you?
Hi, Diana.
Hello.
May can't come fast enough.
I hear that.
Oh, did I say that out loud? What page are we starting on?
191.
191. How's things going over there?
Good, good. The,
Siding done?
the siding itself is pretty much done. There were some issues at the corners. But I think they've worked that out. And the rock that's going on the front of the building is what they really have left to do. And then,
Wow.
yeah, it's gorgeous. You should take a ride over.
Diana, can you speak up just a little bit?
I'm sorry.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I was just telling them that the building is gorgeous with the new siding, and then the rock that's going on the front of the building is really gonna,
Oh, good,
make it,
thank you.
yeah.
Let's go to 5100 personnel.
The formula did leave out the 1273
Oh, it did.
on the community services director. Bottom line won't change, because I'll just be changing the lump sum disallowed recommendation.
For the 1273?
Yep.
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
And just as a consistency thing, I noticed like the director and services coordinator are 40 hours a week versus 38, which is the normal town. Is that,
Town hall's 38, all other out units are 40.
okay, thank you.
Anybody have any questions with the salaries?
Nope.
Left out the top.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Moving on to 5110, employee support.
To offset it.
Any questions with this? No? Okay, moving on. 5200, expense budget. Hey, did the software go up?
No, it's been the same
It's been this 13? Okay.
for the,
Excuse me, thank you.
required,
Right, it's still
move
working,
to this one, yeah.
and it's still working?
Well, it has issues, but the software that we had in the first go-around was not robust enough at all.
Okay.
So we went to my senior center, and it does a really good job, but there are some things I've started tracking by hand, just because we need that accuracy.
Understood.
But there's another company out there that's working on trying to outdo my senior center, so when they have the security and everything in place that we need, we'll be checking them out,
Okay, good.
see what they can do.
And you have a yoga instructor?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
So, sure,
That's
that.
what day is that?
Thursdays,
Okay.
chair yoga.
So if I do this,
Any questions with
Do you
this?
have good attendance there with the yoga?
Oh, yes.
this.
We
should
have
equal that.
consistently 12.
12?
Oh,
Do I
it's a circular
qualify?
reference.
Everybody qualifies.
Oh, gosh.
Any questions with that? Excellent. Go to supplies, 5400.
Because he's gonna offset the 1200 with that. So he's gonna do this.
What if I changed it to 46?
No.
No?
Watch. So this was the number when those two numbers were the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's the 1273.
Any questions with 5400?
Yeah, I would do the same.
I just have one
Yes.
quick question. Where are we at with opening our kitchen at the
What?
senior center? Like,
It's capital.
are we close? Are we 2/3? Are we half?
Construction has not even begun there, really. The floor is in. We had a donation of the floor years ago. Yes, I'm anticipating being able to do that, but we could not start that project until we finished the
Siding.
siding.
The siding,
Right there.
right, okay.
51.
Any other questions?
So that $5,000 for the kitchen, that's not for like pots and pans and containers,
No,
that's
it's-
just included in that. There's actually a physical kitchen that has to still get completed?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
sorry, I didn't
that-
think so, I've been over there, but,
Yeah. I'm hoping, it's wishful hope.
perfect, that's how you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. 5700, volunteer appreciation.
Because he thought he had $1,200 more.
So it's really 160.
0.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
The formula grant.
Excellent. Okay, I got you. Thank you. Okay, great.
We on 194,
Huh?
97?
197?
Increase in the ridership is due to that.
That's
That's
a
what
separate one.
I'm saying, even though I think,
We've been working on it, Diana,
Right,
if you wanted to.
These numbers is what drove me to decide to track this by hand to, in comparison to what the software is really doing. In order to budget for the drivers, we have to guesstimate what the ridership is going to be.
Right.
And it is on a downward turn, but we're in a cycle right now where we're having people moving into the nursing home or to rehab and a lot of death. We have a book that is this thick of an Excel spreadsheet of a list of the dead people. And we have to refer to that, even though in the software, you look someone up and you say, oh, he's still alive, why did we get this piece of mail back? Well, we go to the book and he really is dead, you know, so
Oh, I got you.
there may be a duplicate person in there or what have you. So we try to have redundancy.
Okay, any other questions?
Just address the number.
Please.
So when we first started doing this, the mark was done as a revolving fund. DOR disallowed that a couple years ago. Which meant all expenses had to go into the budget, so we had to plan for the worst case scenario. We then planned for, if we're gonna spend that, here's what the reimbursements would be, and we carried that reimbursement on the revenue side. And DOR said, no, we don't believe you're ever gonna get that for reimbursement. We explained to them what the issue was, and they said, okay, fine, we'll let you do it one last year. That was this year. So we've had to spend some time trying to tighten up on what we think we're gonna really give for rides. And that does mean, because we've now downsized that number, there is a potential that we could run short and have to backfill that.
How bad is that?
Pardon?
How bad is that if you do it that way?
It's what the rides are. It's
But if
not
you
a-
lowball it, I thought you were saying you would lowball it and then you have to
Well,
backfill
we
it with
we
some
haven't-
other funds.
I wouldn't say we've lowballed it, but we've tried to be fairly tight.
Okay.
So whereas this year, we might have said 153,000 as an example. Next year, I think we're using 70-something thousand. So we then took what we thought we'd get for reimbursement on that and even lowered that a little bit, because we've gotta be able to get the number past DOR. So that $60,000 number, Kelly and I talked about it. I'm pretty comfortable we can get that by DOR, but you need to understand there's challenges on both sides.
Mhm.
We have to plan for maximum rides as best we can estimate them, and minimum reimbursements, because we have to be able to get the number past DOR. So I just want you to be aware of that, that can be a challenge during the course of the budget year.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you for doing that, Carter, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
It was great seeing you.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
I hope I can, hope I can.
Dollars, but, so what? That's what he said.
We got next.
Recreation and culture, I think Scott Bill's not here, but I think Jackie's gonna handle that. And folks from the cultural council, I believe, are here.
Jackie,
Yes, Jackie?
Do you wanna do Pat first?
Yeah, it's fine.
Your unit.
For the market.
What page you start on?
What is that figure? Is that the minimum that we need?
So we wouldn't see it.
Cultural, this is cultural affairs, right? Cultural?
209.
Cultural
Council.
Council?
Oh, wait,
That's what I meant to say. What page is it? Do you remember?
209.
209?
Start the, yeah,
Do we have to give a conservative?
209.
I see it.
Yep, I got it. 209?
You see it.
Number of rides we need to do? No.
So we're at 62.5.
Expense budget, 5,100.
That's the rec side of the house, Jackie, where's
That is
the
the rec
cultural
side.
council
Sorry.
items gonna be?
I think they're all together.
Yeah, they're
I
combined.
think you combined them.
Thank you for that, that was very helpful.
Yeah, recreation and cultures combined.
Culture.
Yeah.
Recreation.
You wanna go to page 211?
I know, we'll stop, I'm sorry.
Okay, I see what you're
Page
saying.
209 is basically the recreations,
Yep,
staffing, cultural councils, expenses are basically on page 211.
anybody have any questions with that?
You finding it, Jackie?
No, I'm not, sorry.
211?
Thank you.
5,400? Expense budget? Swimming program? It's back to,
The rec side.
it's down to the rec side again.
Two are down at the
Yeah,
bottom.
so there's on,
Recreation.
page 212, Jack, I'm sorry.
Which one are we on?
$50 for postage, 500 for materials, craft supplies, festivals. Did you see that? The 400 and the 50?
I can jump.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead.
If you look at pages 213 to 214, it has some pictures of some of the events that the Cultural Council does do. I mean, Carter felt it was important, as well as the Cultural Council and Jackie, to put this in there, just so you have an idea of what they're doing in the community. Inspiring the kids, inspiring other people and the like, so.
Excellent.
And the banner, that one photo shows the banner, which I think was a great idea that they had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've
I
actually
was
made,
very
we've actually made
impressed
up
with
two
that.
banners now, one for the cultural council, and then we have one that says crafts, free crafts for kids, to try to encourage people to come over, because if you get the kids, you get the families,
That's right.
you know, so.
Yeah, put candy out there, they'll find it, they'll find it. Kids love candy.
Glitter works well too.
Glitter.
The town for many years viewed the cultural council as the entity to distribute the state lottery monies. And I view it a little bit larger. We're trying to be a little bit more supportive. I wish we could do more. But we try to expand our support, because the more things that they can do in conjunction with rec and historic, as part of the community services office and the community service units, raises the quality of life, the public relations value in the community, and all that turns into dollars. It all turns into the value of housing, economic development, and so I just kind of go straight to the dollar part. The mushy part's all nice, no disrespect. But I see it as an economic development effort as much as anything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for everything you guys do. It is important to the community and the town. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
See how easy this was? See how easy? Yeah. No, you're very welcome, thank you. And I hate to do this, but I have an emergency at home, so I have to leave.
Thank you, Carter.
So I want to thank everybody for coming up. Diane Haley Brooks will be taking over for me as the assistant chair.
I'm gonna steal this.
Anything to do, John?
Huh?
Good?
No.
Never good. Sorry.
I want to thank everybody for coming, I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Take care.
I'll leave you a call later.
Okay.
Don't do that.
We're going to cable next.
You gotta allow that, huh?
Do you wanna go to cable?
I think
Gotta finish rec.
rec is at 209.
209.
Everything. We have about the mark.
Everybody, we're on page 209.
209, you said?
209, yep.
209,
Jackie's
yeah.
gonna be
Gotcha,
presenting
gotcha.
that.
Right.
Jackie's got a lot of department budgets over there, so.
Oh, we're back. Wait.
Centralized, I love it.
We just did that.
We did ask the recreation department to take a look at area communities as to whether or not we should look at, these salaries are very, very low. It's very difficult to get these types of people. We're lucky to have some dedicated folks who've returned, but you're gonna end up raising this just to compete. And when that happens, you're gonna be surprised at what the real costs are. And so we've asked Rec to take a look at what other communities do with respect to a fee-based program. I think that the Rec Commission is looking for a sense of direction as to whether or not that's something the board would like to see them do. So that's one of these chicken egg. They're waiting for you to tell them if you wanna do it as opposed to doing it and then bringing it to you to see if you wanna consider it. So I think that's, the board's gonna have to take a lead on that if that's something that they wanna look at.
We're gonna discuss that at a workshop then, or?
Fee.
Yeah, I mean, this is a workshop now, but I think what I'd like to do is try to get through all the budget issues today. And then we've got that one evening where you've got the schools coming in and we've got the warrants. It wouldn't surprise me if you need at least a third workshop in which to discuss some of these other things. But this research will take 3 to 4 months, and you would need to have it completed by next, October, November, so you could have that discussion going in. So, if you could have that discussion and come to a decision as a result of this budget process, I think that would be helpful to everybody. The only real, other recreation and culture, there is a, capital item for 52,000 and change. I didn't have the full breakdown, we stuck in the budget, whatever they gave us at that point. They did go in front of the capital committee, I don't know if they were physically there.
Say that again?
The, Gilman Waite, 52,000.
Did they come from before us?
No, I presented
Yeah,
more.
I don't,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think Adam ended up presenting on their behalf. So that's a late addition to the capital, program, which will be funded through the CPA.
Yeah. Yep.
Are there any other questions on 5100? So moving on to 5110. Any commentary, Jackie?
No.
Are there any questions on 5110? Okay, so moving on to 5200 for purchase of services. Oh, that, we already went over that. Okay. So what's that? And 212. Sorry.
It's fine, it's fine.
The 52,000 for the upgrades to Gilman White, that was for, what, it was multiple thing, okay. Yep. Yeah, I just couldn't remember it.
So there's the
No-
swim
no further
program, the
questions.
soccer program, the basketball program, and the softball program. Okay.
Anything else they would do, if it's fee-based, can come out of the revolving fund that was created for the community services unit.
Any questions on 5400 for Jackie?
Oh, man.
Okay. And who will be presenting the cable budget?
I will.
Okay, so we're moving on to page 306.
Steve couldn't be here?
Steve has a family medical emergency. He's unable to attend.
We did recommend exactly what he requested, with a note that before, the capital expenses are authorized for actual expenditure, we do think that, and he'd asked to come back in and re-present to the select board on his business plan. We do think that that larger discussion should take place before you sign off on some of the capital. We will be advertising, next week for some additional staffing down there, that I got from him last week. So we can certainly get any questions that you might have back to Steve, but We'd like to give a chance for him to be involved in those larger discussions.
So we'll start off with 5,100.
The extra positions that Steve was proposing are in there.
Media assistance.
Media assistants and the station manager, I believe that's a new position, with the thought being that that would free some time up for Steve to pursue some other initiatives that he has in his goals.
Are there any questions for Jackie on 5,100?
I do. He's basing his projections off of retained earnings or enterprise.
His
Or one
capital
and the same.
requests are so large in this budget that the only way to support them would be to use some retained earnings.
Yeah, because I know he.
On the operating side, he's well within,
I think that was my
operating
point, yeah, okay.
yeah.
Did the advisory committee have a copy of his proposed business plan?
Not that I recall.
Jeff?
I thought he came in and presented it to us.
Does the advisory committee have a copy of the cable committee's proposed budget plan?
Yes, he came before us and
Yeah.
He's not been
presented
there for
that.
that one.
Does Mr. Curry,
I
don't-
remember most of what Steve was doing based on his report to the capital planning committee.
do you
And
do you
and then
mind
last September, he
maybe
went in front of the.
redistributing that?
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, I'll work with him to get that.
Yeah, it's.
Can you get that from Jeff?
Sure.
at the
I
last
think that
me-
it's a good,
the
it was a
special
good
town meeting
plan,
last
Okay.
fall.
but it does use up a
I
lot
can-
of retained earnings.
Jeff,
Do
it
you
was
remember
last,
getting that,
It was
Julie?
presented to
last
them.
September-ish.
It was
Right
already
before the
presented.
Maybe
special
Mike
town
wasn't
meeting.
on then?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
We
it
got
was
it at
presented
capital
to them
planning.
as a whole.
I'll dig that
So
up
when
or
you got a
contact
capital
Steve,
planning,
but,
do you know, do you have that still?
I still have the capital planning stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
all right, maybe.
No, he
we should
presented
review
that.
Okay,
That's fine.
He ca- it was
Sorry about
last,
that, Jackie.
before the special town meeting last fall.
Yeah.
He came in and did that detailed
Mm-hmm.
report, because he was
Exactly,
talking
so
about
So you do
revenue
have-
generating
Extra
because he
paperwork.
didn't think Comcast, there would be
Can't
another
get this out,
contract.
'cause
and
we'll
stuff.
be here till
So he
Right.
brought that, he did a good presentation to us.
Yeah.
it was,
Sewer
okay.
shows up on time.
That's
So
why
if there are no
what
other
Mike's saying is
questions
I kinda
for
recall that it was
5,100, we'll move
self-sufficient
on to
budget that
5,110.
He generated enough.
We're on page 306, everyone?
Got it.
We're actually
307.
moving on to
307,
page
excuse me.
307.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I can't, with 8 people talking, I'm totally lost from the conversation. So where are we going from here?
Where, if there are no questions for
I just-
5,100, we're actually gonna move to 5,110 on page 307.
Thank you. I'm at the end, I guess, I can't.
Is there any commentary, Jackie, for this? Does anyone have any questions on employee support? No? Okay. So moving on to purchase of services, 5,200.
I believe Steve added an extra page or two breaking down some of the promotional ideas he was thinking about for that particular line item.
For his promotional budget?
Promotional budget, yes.
It's on page 312.
Okay.
I need to get this in the same.
Yeah, I have that. Promotional budget. Are there any questions on Steve's promotional budget? Did everybody have an opportunity to read that? Okay. So we'll move to page, that was, sorry.
Yeah, 309.
We'll move to 50, I'm sorry. Yep, we're on page 309.
So the on 5,200, there were a lot of disallows.
5,200?
It was 3270,
Yeah,
and he'll have to, live within that budget,
okay.
even though he wanted the 5,000 and the 6,000
yeah.
and,
The promotional budget was kind of,
right.
Well, some disallowed was primarily driven by the promotional budget. There were a number of expenses in there that I quite frankly didn't feel were public expenditures. If they were driven by friends of, if this was a nonprofit 501c3, that would be one thing. But I think that, you know, Steve's got a very ambitious business development plan. It makes some sense, but I do think that this needs a larger vetting, you know, of what its role is gonna be and how quickly you're gonna burn through the cash. We just have a different view of how quickly one should stoke the furnace here. And that's a conversation that the select board, I think, needs to have at some length. They had it to a level where they were comfortable supporting, last fall. But there's some capital items in here, can we revisit the issue of whether or not it could be part of a magnet program at the schools? What are some things that we can be thinking about?
right.
So for the most part, I left it intact, except for I was sort of over the edge troubled.
Yeah.
Again, please remember, this is only my recommendation.
Oh,
I think I agree with you. I think the promotional items, were
doing these.
scavenger hunt, trivia bee. I don't know. I agree with the disallows.
I did too, when I looked at it.
Yep.
It's very aggressive,
Mm-hmm,
which is very ambitious, but it is very aggressive.
mm-hmm.
That's just my personal opinion. Okay, moving on to page 309. Office supplies, miscellaneous equipment, heating oil, and contingency for equipment repair. Any
Heating-
questions on that?
Just so you'll know, heating oil is here because this is an enterprise fund, and we can charge that cost to the enterprise fund, not eat it in the general fund.
Moving on to sorry, Mike.
5,400, I know this has come up, on the advisory board, a few times, but it was the, if you guys remember, contingency equipment repair. The line item is $5,000, and we've discussed that before to say, what does that entail? That's a large contingency fund. I don't know if there's any, I don't think we ever got any fidelity to why it was so high. I think it was in the context of the Microsoft switchover. Am I thinking the right conversation?
No,
I know
that
we've
was
seen
the
that $5,000 line item before for contingency.
I think this is more of a breakdown because of the kind of equipment. I think we need a better breakdown in this line item, but I think it's because of the type of equipment they use. If it breaks down, it's very expensive to repair.
Right, like
And they
Chief
have
Bennett
those-
talked
They have
about.
those handheld iPad
Yeah.
things, or their server, or a microphone, or if anything breaks down, it's not
Okay.
cheap.
It's justified because it's IT equipment,
It's-
like Chief Bennett was saying
That's
his
what
stuff.
I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Jackie, I don't know
my
if that's your
impression,
thought
too.
process, but I wish that we could have a
We'll
better
get you an answer on that.
breakdown of that.
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, and the next, hold on, I just wanna write this down. Page 310, expense,
Yep, you're right.
5,600. So these also can be charged to the enterprise fund.
Mhm.
Right. an enterprise fund. Right. Any questions? Okay. And then account number 5700, under other, and these are all. Also, we're town hall furnishings,
Snow Hall, and then Town Hall live streaming, remember there was a
and
select
town
board?
hall live streaming.
There was a select board goal.
Oh, these are our goals, okay.
I'll check that out. That's new.
And the town, the
Are we on
station
5700?
upgrade.
Yeah.
You recommended that?
Diane, I believe that's a new feature for this year, is town hall live streaming.
Yeah,
It's something he hopes to implement, yeah.
these choose this, these were,
Capital.
well, they were part of our goals.
Oh,
This town hall live streaming was something that was brought up, and Julie, the town hall furnishings.
The Scout Hall furnishings have been discussed.
Okay.
However, there has been no vote where to put
Well,
that.
that's in the.
I mean,
cable
it's on
TV.
here,
And
that's
that's
nice
why
to
I'm
see,
saying that
but
for the most part,
for the
I
most
just
part, we should wait till
let
Steve's
this
available.
budget go
Yeah,
forward, and I think
Okay.
a lot of this just needs better vetting.
Okay,
I agree.
And on some of it, I know that we can do these things more
Yes,
cost
ma'am.
effectively. They may not be to the level that Steve would like,
okay,
but I think we can get there in a more cost effective manner
okay.
and shepherd our resources down the line.
This needs to be
Because
discussed.
it's a balance between
Station live.
serving the community, trying to build a little bit more of a self-sustaining operation. But if that doesn't work, shepherding some of your resources so that if you do lose the funding
I did have
through
an ask me
cable
about that.
over time, you can keep the business model going for a while. It's a different point of view, that's all.
Okay. I believe that is the end of the cable TV budget, correct? Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any overall questions for Jackie? Or any other for this section that we may have missed? Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Jackie, for your
you.
time
Thanks,
this
Jackie.
Thank
afternoon.
you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
What the hell is that?
Who's putting-
Cable 215.
So the next budget is the Selectmen's budget on page 44 in Carter.
Yeah, I'd like to draw your attention to page 41 to start, please. Because the select board's budget process, if you will, really starts in September, where they have a retreat, and we go about trying to determine what their goals are for the coming several years. We then try to, where we need cost estimates, lay out a cost estimate, and if there are things that need to be done in a sequence, for instance, before you would go and get what the pay are for all the positions, you'd have to have new job descriptions in place to make sure that you are researching the job and can tell the differences. So they do that in September. This is the results, pages 41, pages 42. Then come November, we take a quick look at what the revenue projections are. Starting next year, we'll be doing a 5-year revenue projection model and a 5-year expense projection model, knowing what we know about the economy. We have some sense of what trends are based upon historic economic norms. Then that drives us to December, which is that budget guidance memo that went out to everybody. Tells them, okay, here's the selectmen's goals that are attached. If your department's in there, make sure that you are telling the selectmen what you need to do to get the goals that they want to have accomplished done. So the police chief looks at it, small example, and says, oh, Carter, they want more speeding enforcement and more attention out in the neighborhoods. What does that mean? So we thrash around some ideas. That's where the $4,000 speed monitor comes from in his budget, because it is a way of implementing one of the select board's goals. So on page 44, the selectmen's personnel budget, you'll notice two things in there. One is the next step of the succession planning. The planning was to hire the municipal management fellow 1 year. At the end of 1 year, assuming all's going well, and I'd like to report that I think it is. We're preparing a report for the select board over the next week or two. But I would go down by so-called 16 hours that are closer to what I can't say on TV because of my pension. Would go to 12. And Adam, I would take that cut in pay, and Adam would go up in pay to the title of Assistant Town Administrator. We had some trouble filling this clerical position we've been trying to fill off and on. So what we did last summer, I think to some good success, was we took our student interns, and when they were putting in extra hours, we didn't pay them for the time they had to be here to get their school credit. But if it was on a school vacation or over the summer, we had projects for them. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Brian or Nick, I would encourage you to just say hello to them and talk with them a little bit. Bottom line is basically all the same. On our 5110, this is the employee support and in this case, it's for the select board, for Holly, for myself, for Adam. There is the car allowance that I get, the cell phone stipend. We have a little bit in here for that employee and volunteer recognition and promotion program. Some of that is for those payments that we made. Laurie, Mallory was one of our award winners last year, and Holly, who had suggested that we take the select board packet, except for the executive session materials, and we actually scan that entire thing, put that up there on the web, and any citizen who has access to the internet, when that agenda goes up, can now see, for the most part, the same agenda package that the select board has. So she got the communication award last year.
Carter?
Yes, ma'am.
Stop for a second. Did anybody have any questions on 5100? Does anybody have any questions on 5110? Okay, moving on.
5200, this is for town council. We've had some lawsuits. We've won, but they still cost money. So that has moved up a little bit. We will probably have to backfill this account. The codification process and that litigation has cost us more than we would have liked. And the town forester. Yes, when we do that timber cut, we get the revenues, but we have to pay them. And so whether it's trying to sell the last of the mined material out of the old town pit or timber, we have to pay the consultant to do that. Then the revenue comes in to the general funds revenue stream.
I have a question, Carter. I mean, it's not a significant amount of money, but employee physicals, why does the town have to pay for that? Don't you already?
Because I don't want to own them. So when we send a prospective hire to get their pre-employment physical, and the center signs off, we own them. And for just one person, who they rejected, who had a medical issue that, had we not caught it, could have ended up costing us thousands of dollars in
So
workers'
it's more,
comp.
for want of better words, a preventative service.
It's a risk analysis.
Yep, risk
Okay.
avoidance.
It's risk
We
avoidance.
put every prospective employee through a Corey check driver's license,
Okay.
pre-employment physical, and if they are gonna be on the finance team, we require that they provide a credit report to us. If there's an issue on there, they can provide us with a letter and explain it.
Okay. No, thank you.
The town forester, you said that that was a contracted service?
Don't worry about it.
Before Mr. Mayo was our forester, correct? Because, no,
Tree warden,
No?
he's a tree
there's
warden.
the tree warden, then there's a licensed registered forester who goes out and looks at our lands and determines which, if any, of our lands are suitable to have timber harvested off of them. So for instance, last year we did some acreage behind the town garage, and it's embarrassing, I can't remember where the other parcel was. No. Maybe over at the old landfill? Library was a couple years before, and they
Oh, it was a couple years before.
didn't quite do that one correctly.
Sorry about
He
I
then
think
puts
it's
it out
the
to bid
landfill.
for us, and he gets paid on the basis of how much we get, but we can't take it out of the revenue stream, we have to pay him.
Got it. Okay. I thought this was tied to the, like, the town common. There were trees.
No.
I remember there was an issue.
Arborist.
It's an
That's
arborist.
the-
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
that's the town, that's the tree warden.
It's tough to see the forest
And
through
then a
the tree.
licensed,
I'm just trying to get to use that.
Down in front.
That's a good one, Mike.
Tell me that wasn't all about the joke.
No,
Are
it
there-
was not. Thank
Are
you.
there any other questions on 5200?
Have to spend money to make money.
Okay, moving on to
the way it
page
is.
48.
let me just real quickly say that if we
Oh,
don't
I'm
use
sorry,
it for the
Carter.
forester, so for instance, we're applying for a grant for Stone Bridge.
Mhm.
We have the money in the Stone Bridge budget. Had the Stone Bridge failed, and we would have had to have applied for that grant, we don't have the engineering expertise
Right.
to put it together. That 5,000 gives me some flexibility. The forester, an engineering consultant, it gives us a few dollars there should the need come up. $5,400 is basically paper envelopes, all of those things.
Any questions? Moving on.
5,600. This is a reserve account that would cover, we hope, any collective bargaining agreement that we would reach. We are bargaining with 3 units right now. And merit raises for the non-union personnel. We do the evaluations for the non-union personnel in September. We'll probably move that up a little bit this year. Then we come in front of the selectmen with a request for transfer, and they can see who's getting what. It is not COLAs for the most part, unless they're union folks. Everything else is merit-based, and it compares how good a job you're doing and internal equity. So if I have an employee in one department, administrative assistant 1, doing a substantially better job or has shown a far greater advancement than an administrative assistant 1 in another department, they don't necessarily get the same pay raise. They can be modestly different. And this is just a lump sum pool. It's not divvied up at this point as to which it would go to. That would happen at the town meeting. We would have an article to appropriate X, and to meet said appropriation by transferring the amount of money from this account to whether it's police or highway, or, yeah, police or highway, basically.
Yes, Jeff?
Looking at 19 and looking at this year's allotment, it's quite a jump. Is there a reason for that? I mean, is there some labor contract coming in?
Three
at the
unions,
same-
you got three
Three
unions
unions.
this year.
Same time?
Yep.
Okay.
Police, dispatch.
Police, dispatch, and highway.
and
Sewer is paid out of, their
Highway.
fund, but yes, they are,
But they are
Yep.
together in their collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, they went from 40 to 80, I was just.
the other thing is that, on some of our non-union, so, I don't wanna get into our collective bargaining, but on some of our non-union, we are so far below the 8 ball that we've gotta perhaps be a little bit
Minimum
more
wage
aggressive
having to
this
jump.
year.
Okay.
I've got entry wages on some positions at $15.50 an hour, and that job in another community would be 19. So and inflation is starting to pick up, wage increases are starting to pick up. We got the minimum wage pressure, so between the three unions and a need to pick the pace up a little bit, Jeff, that's gonna explain when you see the breakdown. I think that'll explain it to you. Truthfully, I would have liked a little bit more, but we'll work with what we have.
Are there
And
any
if the
other?
collective bargaining agreements we reach require a little bit more, I'll have to come back to you, because I can't artificially constrain where we are ahead of time.
Right. Are there any other questions on 5600? Moving on. 5700?
5,700 is our dues to the Massachusetts Municipal Association. Advertising, everything from a liquor license hearing that we have to hold to procurement, a budget, item that we're bidding out. We have to run an ad to our help wanted. Best guess on the number of annual reports, then before the fall town meeting or the annual town meeting, we kind of get together with Carol and say, okay, here's what the issues are gonna be. What do you think the interest is gonna be, so we can try to make sure we have enough books available. I got some years where I could still give you, as many copies of the voter's guide or annual town meeting report as you want, and I've got some years where sometimes it can come pretty close. It
Perhaps
really
we should
depends
convert
upon the issue.
the heat source for this building from oil
Paper?
to past voting guides. I think I just found us some cost savings.
That could be.
I like the voter's guide. I think it's good to have the voters have something in their hands
I
that's
agree.
actually looks professional.
And gives them the information they need.
And it gives them the, right, and it gives them the information they
It
need.
would be nice if more people used it.
And read it.
If they took one, they came
They
to get
took
one
one.
and took it and read it and digested it and then came to meetings with questions.
Right. Agreed, Amy.
I completely agree with you, and I bring that up as often as possible at
Right.
select board
Yes, she
meetings when we're
does.
sitting in this room
Yep.
for 2 hours and we have no questions about town meeting, and then we get to town meeting and we have 50 questions that could have been answered throughout the year had they taken a moment to come and sit in front of us and ask that question. So it can be really frustrating.
Or even emailed us.
So yeah, I agree with, even emailing, phoning us, we are totally open to all of that.
Like if you leave some.
It's so easy to get a hold of us
Even any of
throughout
you.
the year, and we don't get
They can
that.
ask
But
you
you
all
have to
those
remember, some
questions
people
too.
want that grand stage.
Do people have to
They
come
really
here
do,
to pick
because
them up?
school committee mentioned it as well, you need to advertise your town meeting more often, blah, blah, blah. I said, we can do everything
Usually
out
just
there,
the town meeting,
but put
they
that
are-
person
they're
in the
always
seat.
done too
If they don't
early
wanna
on.
be in the seat, they're not gonna be in the
Okay.
seat.
Yep.
That's,
I think if they're online too, but I think if somebody were not able to get out, I would hope that we could mail them one.
Well, I'm just thinking too,
It's just
putting
not
them where
always enough time.
places where people are too, like Cumberland's or Dunkin'. I don't know if you can do that, but if they're printed
not
ahead
I
of
believe
time.
we have them at
Can-
senior
Carter,
center,
do you hear
correct?
her question?
We try to have them about a week before.
And
She's asking if
we
you
have
could
them
put
out
them
in
other
locations, I
places.
believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could we put them other places like Cumberland's or the post
Like
office?
where people
or
go a lot.
would we be able to do that?
We would just have to think of how many would end up getting tossed that we might need.
Right.
But if they were in some locations, like the senior
Maybe the
center,
post
the
office, the senior
library.
center, the library.
And we can always do a sweep before town meeting to pick them
Yeah,
up
we
and hand
can
out.
certainly look at expanding our circulation.
Just an idea.
I think people at the, like, would like to, like, they go pick up their mail at the post
Yeah.
office. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the state guides are usually
newspaper.
held,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
tax forms and that. I think people are accustomed to looking for it there.
Right.
Ooh, good point.
Thanks.
Any other questions or commentary? Okay. That's all set with that? Julie, did you have something else?
Nope.
Oh, okay, I thought that was for something.
Yeah, actually, can I suggest that we take a short break before we go to the next?
Sure,
As
of
I'm
course.
a bit ahead of the game,
Yeah.
a little bit behind.
Is that all right with everyone else? Do we take a break?
Yes.
Maybe 10
I
minutes?
just need to stretch.
Perfect.
10 minutes, sounds be back around 2:30?
Yes,
Like
perfect. Thank you.
riveting,
Yeah,
Deb.
perfect. 2:30.
Let me know when
Are
you
you-
get
is it-
tired of
It's
these.
20 after 2 now?
Yeah.
No, I think it's.